Hi everyone, it's Lou Collins. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I've got a project for you using these dies and creating some beautiful stamps from them. Now these are layering dies, there's 2 in the pack, but this technique is going to work with absolutely any dies you have in your stash already. So these ones in particular have 3 layers to them, so I'm just going to die cut into my foam all 3 layers from either the moth or the butterfly. They're both butterflies, but either way. So all you need is a piece of foam. Now this one has a backing on it, so it's sticky already, but you don't have to have the sticky backing on there if you don't want to. You can just use plain foam. Now this is often called funky foam, children's foam, craft foam. There's all sorts of different names for it. So you'll find this in most shops. You'll find it on CraftStash, and it's really easy to die cut through as well. Most importantly, the colour doesn't matter because of course we're stamping onto it. So I've got my 3 layers from one of my sets here, and I've put them all onto my foam already, onto the front of the foam, not onto the reverse where the sticky is. So I'm going to be taping these down, but when you run them through your die cutting machine, what you want to make sure is that you're only running them through once. So we're going to run them through the rollers as you normally would, and don't let the plates come back through again. So when we run it through with cardstock or paper, what we often do is we run it through the once and then we come back, we reverse our plates back through. But what's going to happen is that foam's going to lift as you go through the first time, and then on the way back you're kind of going to get this movement of the foam under the die, and then as you come back you're going to double cut and you're going to have an image that's not clear. You're going to have 2 outlines to it, which isn't perfect. So make sure that you are simply running it through just the once when you do your die cutting, and that will give you a perfect image. So I'm going to die cut these now, and then we'll come back and start making stamps from them. So as you can see, the dies have cut through the foam absolutely beautifully, just with one pass here. Any foam will cut really, really nicely. I've never ever had a problem with foam cutting through. So I'm going to release these from my foam here. I did stick them down with a bit of tape to just hold them still so they didn't slide about while I was putting them through the plates. But as you can see, everything's falling out nicely. The only issue I ever have with die cutting foam is that sometimes the tiny little bits inside each of the die cuts, they can sometimes kind of stick in. So if we just have a look, we've got the little hearts here. They can sometimes get caught in. You need a pokey tool or something similar just to pop those out. So rather than an acrylic block or a stamping platform, I'm going to be using shrink plastic. Now this is because this type of plastic is a really, really strong kind of acetate. We're not going to be getting it hot, so the shrinking element doesn't matter, but I'm going to be cutting a panel of this for each of my stamps separately and making it quite a bit bigger than my stamp, so I've got plenty to hold on to. So just cutting it with scissors. You can use strong acetate if you've got plastic packaging, that will also work as well, but essentially because it's see-through, we're going to be able to easily see where we're stamping. Now I've just placed or glued with the adhesive backing each of my 3 foam shapes onto the shrink plastic or the acetate, the plastic packaging that you've used. But for each of these I've got lots of space around now so I can do my inking. Now when you're thinking about layering stamps, as these will be or are now, you're going to start with the most solid image at the bottom, and I always like to start with the palest colour. So I've got my Distress Oxides here, which I love. I've got tonal colours. The lightest one is going to be the first one. So Tumbled Glass is my lightest blue. I'm going to put a piece of paper just underneath me here, just so that while I'm inking my stamp I don't get any ink on my background, on my mat, that's all. But you know, you don't have to do this step. So my lightest colour first of all is going to be my first layer. We're working from the back forward. This is with Distress Oxides. I always work from the lightest up to the darkest at the top, but some inks will layer nicely where you can then put darker colours underneath and lighter colours on top. Obviously check the ink and the properties of that before you try that, but it's good to try this technique out with lots of different brands of inks and types of inks as well. And don't forget, of course, you could also do this with heat embossing, which looks absolutely beautiful. Now for each layer I'm going to just wipe around the excess that's gone onto the shrink plastic because I don't want this going onto my card. The foam is in general usually just a little bit thinner than your non-homemade stamps, so just be wary that the plastic at the back might touch the surface of your card. So you can easily see where I'm going to be stamping through that clear plastic, the shrink plastic. So just now pressing down, making sure to press all over the surface of the stamp nice and evenly. You can always lift up a little corner to make sure the ink's transferring the way you want it to be transferring. And then when you're done, there we go. Now we do have a lovely sort of distressed image to this one because the surface of the foam wasn't perfectly smooth. But that's fine. So now I'm going to go in with my next layer, which has a bit more detail in it and it's slightly smaller. And I'm going in with my mid-tone, my mid-blue here. So I think this one was salty, no, it might have been broken china actually. Either salty ocean or broken china, I believe. So tumbled glass, broken china and uncharted mariner were the three blues I used here. So just in the same way as before, inking everything up, wiping off the excess and then placing that over your card. It's good if you can get your head directly over the stamp so that you can really see exactly where you're positioning everything. You can see through the circles though. And what's actually happened, which is really nice on the first image, is where there's some embossing detail, stencil detail on the die, it's created a small circle in the imprint there, and that's just given us some even more detail really, which is brilliant. And you'll find this with every die, you'll get a different sort of look. So whether there's scoring detail, embossing detail in it, it will give you a different impression into your foam. So there's our first 2 layers, and of course if you want to, you could just stop at 2 layers. I'm definitely going to do all 3 though, so this time I'm going in with my darkest layer, the Uncharted Mariner. As the stamp gets smaller, because I'm using a large stamp, there's more chance of the ink going on the background, so just make sure you give it a good wipe with either a wet wipe or a piece of damp kitchen towel, as I am here, and just wipe the excess off so it doesn't easily transfer onto your card base, making it messy. If you prefer, you can of course stamp onto scrap cardstock and cut the shape out afterwards and adhere it to your card front. You could even give it some shape then, we're lifting the wings up and such, and that avoids the worry of any of the ink from the shrink plastic going onto the card base. So again, just pressing that down, very, very easy to see where you're layering your stamp up. And lift up, and there we go. Look at that, beautiful, a layered stamp made from layered dies. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish this card, and then we'll come back and look at the end result in a moment. So there we have it, a finished card with 3 layered stamped butterflies. Not a layering stamp I had in my stash, but I do now because I had the dies for them, and you can create these sort of stamps from any dies that you own. Obviously not just Textures brand, absolutely any. Have a play, we'd love to see what you can create using your dies as stamps, and we'd love it if you could share those creations in the Craft World Inspiration Gallery. Thank you for watching, I'll see you again very soon.